Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 5th, 2006. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. Well, this week we talked to participants in two homebrewing contests that we ran across while we were in Denver, the Great American Beer Festival Pro Am competition, and the Long Shot competition sponsored by the Boston Beer Company. Wow, what a week last week was. From Sunday to Sunday, Andy Sparks and I traveled to Denver and the surrounding area and got lots of stuff for both the audio and video podcasts. I want to thank Brian Warren and John Holder for all their help while we were there, especially in helping us navigate around. They really made us feel welcome in the area. And thanks especially to Brian's wife, Anna, for putting up with us while we edited last week's Charlie Papazian episode on Brian's Mac. Hope we didn't overstay our welcome too much. I also want to say thanks to Cindy Jones and the folks at the Brewers Association for all the help last week. They put on quite an event at GABF, and they've been doing it now for 25 years. Be sure to check out Basic Brewing video for our story on the event itself. It was lots of fun. I want to say thanks to everyone also who came up to us at the Great American Beer Festival to say hello. It was great to meet everybody in person, and it was especially fun to shake hands with some of the folks that I've been talking to via email. Part of my goal in going to Denver was to bring you some stuff that you wouldn't have access to even if you were in town for GABF. We saw the first of that this past episode with the Charlie Papazian interview at his house. And by the way, thanks again to Charlie for his hospitality. And you'll get to see Charlie in the next episode of Basic Brewing Video, and you'll get to see where he brews. You may be surprised at how low-tech he is in his brewing process. So that was a whole lot of fun getting to see where Charlie Papazian brews those wonderful beers and to actually taste some of those wonderful beers. But that's just the beginning of the behind-the-scenes stuff, so stay tuned. And check out the link to Andy Sparks' blog, if you haven't yet, from our GABF experience. There's a link in the description of this past week's episode on basicbrewingradio.com, and I believe it is gabf2006.blogspot.com. You can see a picture of me and Brian lying on the curb in front of the tasting room at Avery Brewing Company. You'll just have to see why we're lying on the curb that day. That was a fun day. On the serious side, we have kind of a rare serious news event in the beer world this week. Apparently, according to early reports, 4% of the United States hop crop went up in flames in a warehouse fire in Yakima Valley. No word yet on how it's going to affect the price of hops in the homebrew store or the price of beer on the shelves. And thanks to everybody who sent me links to that story. On the lighter side, let's check into the mailbag, why don't we? Davey in the Bay Area in California writes to give us a tip on how to get stoppers out of carboys that have been pushed through the neck accidentally. We've had a couple of letters on that issue here recently where people have accidentally pushed the stoppers through when they're trying to stopper up their carboys. Davey says, my dad used to do this with a wine bottle and a cork forced all the way into the bottle when I was a kid, so I know it will work with a carboy and rubber bung. Davey says, roll up a dishcloth along its diagonal and put it halfway or more into the bottle. Flap the cloth around until it opens up enough to let the cork or bung sit on just one layer of the cloth. Then twist and pull the cloth with the bung out of the carboy. Davey says, I hope this helps some folks. Well, thanks, Davey. I never would have thought of that. I hope that brewers will be using the right size stoppers to begin with so they won't have to deal with that issue. But now we know a trick if it does happen. Dave from Meade, Washington. What a great name for a town. Meade, Washington, writes in with an equipment tip. This, Dave says, one of the essential equipment pieces that I think you should include is a Camp Chief cooker. Moving from the stove to a cooker makes brewing so much easier and quicker. This cooker has a burner that can be adjusted from a very low, and Dave says low enough to maintain a mash temperature, to a high boil. Even though the output is lower than some other burners, the noise output is much better tolerated. Dave says it only takes 10 minutes more to bring my 6-gallon wort up to a boil with this than the high-pressure burners that are 3 to 4 times as loud. That's a good tip, Dave. I've got one of those big, loud propane burners, and it does get pretty noisy out on the patio when I'm brewing. But luckily, there have been no complaints from the neighbors yet. Max from Berkeley, California writes, thought I'd pass on a good tip. My homegrown Cascade hops are just now ready, and I picked a bud or two while showing them to a friend. I think they're cones, technically, not buds. But that may be another crop that, I don't know. Anyway, I'm off the track. Max says he then proceeded to drop the 2 cones into the pint of my brown ale he was drinking. After no more than 30 seconds of sitting in the cold beer, the hop cones added an amazingly wonderful flavor and aroma to the beer. Well, that's great. That's wet hopping on the fly there in the garden. I'm going to have to try that myself. Since my Cascade hops are enjoying a second life out there, I thought they were done for the year, but I've got some more coming on. We've had some warm weather lately. Looks like I'm going to get a few more cones before the cold weather hits. Matt from Louisville, Kentucky, or is it Louisville? Louisville, Kentucky writes, I found that by putting my brew pot full wort boil in the bathtub, filling the tub with water and adding a bag or 2 of ice, I can bring the temperature down to pitching range in about 20 minutes, or 25 minutes rather. I also have some 2-liter bottles filled with water and frozen that I sanitize and gently stir the hot wort with. By circulating the wort in one direction and the cold water outside the pot in the other direction, heat exchange is maximized. Matt says you have to be careful not to oxygenate your hot wort when stirring, though. This method is a little more work and probably not anything new to your listeners, but seems just about as fast as immersion chilling. Well, thanks, Matt. That is pretty quick, 25 minutes. That's pretty good. Of course, if you're using your bathtub to chill your wort, you have to pay especially close attention to sanitization because there are potentially more little beasties waiting to jump into your beer since the bathroom is a damp environment and it's a bathroom. So thanks, Matt. Joe from Providence, Rhode Island writes with a recipe suggestion. He says, in light of your fruit beer podcast, I want to write in about an excellent experience I had brewing a Belgian-style wit beer using rhubarb. Joe says, my brewing buddy and I called it Rubrew. The tart, citrusy flavor of about 2 pounds of rhubarb puree added in a mesh bag during secondary in 5 gallons of beer worked perfectly with the tart notes inherent in the style. Since many wit beers and Hefeweizens are already designed to be cloudy, the presence of rhubarb haze in no way detracted from the product. And Joe says, best of all, many gardeners find themselves with an overabundance of rhubarb a few weeks or months before the peak of summer heat, making this a perfect late spring/early summer brew. Well, that sounds tasty. Thanks, Joe. Sounds like something they'd brew in Lake Wobegon, the Rue Brew. Greg down in Brisbane, Australia, has added an improvement to his U.S. to metric converter Excel spreadsheet that's on our site. Greg has added a wall chart that you can print out to use as a reference when you're brewing. And you can find that near the top of basicbrewingradio.com. There's a text link up there. And thanks again to Greg for doing that for us. I hope it will help in going back and forth between the two measurement systems. Now, I know there's a lot more email that I haven't gotten to, especially since we were out of town this past week, and I didn't get a chance to read them on the last show. Remember that I do answer them even if I don't read them on the show, so thanks to everybody who's written in. We're going to talk about 2 homebrewing contests on this episode, as we said in the beginning. The first is in its inaugural year, the Great American Beer Festival Pro Am competition. Here's what they say on the beertown.org site about how the contest works. It says craft breweries could select award-winning homebrew recipes from existing homebrew competitions, that is, competitions held after January 1st, 2005 to qualify, or through their own competition. The winning homebrewers must be American Homebrew Association members at the time of judging. The professional brewers then scaled up the winning homebrew recipes to be brewed in their brewery and entered in this special competition. This year there were 35 entries in the GABF Pro Am. We caught up with the homebrewer Joe Formanek, who was one of the homebrewers chosen to compete, along with a professional, in the Pro Am.
My name is Joe Formanek. I'm from Bolingbrook, Illinois. I'm a member of the Urban Knaves of Grain Homebrew Club in Bolingbrook. Actually, it's in DuPage County. I'm entered in the Pro-Am competition, it's an inaugural season for this competition. What it is, it allows the amateur brewer to get together with professional brewers and really get an idea of what goes on in the larger scale. Now, as a home brewer, you're brewing 5 to 10 gallons at a time. The pros, you're doing 7, 10, 20 barrels. So what's fun is that you're able to get in there and actually brew that beer along with the professional brewer at a much greater scale, and much more ingredients, the whole 9 yards, and you really see what goes on in that at that level.
How did you personally get involved in the competition?
This beer that I entered with Mike Rominski, the brewmaster of America's Brew Pub in Aurora, it's called Hannah's Imperial Cherry Stout. This was the Best of Show winner at the Drunk Monk Challenge, which is a competition held at America's Brew Pub in Aurora in March every year. One of the prizes from that competition is that you get to brew your beer with Mike and come out here to the GABF, enter it, and have some fun. And I had one last year with another beer, which was entered in the standard competition. But now with this opportunity with the Pro-Am, it worked out wonderfully.
Well, that's awesome. Have you been able to meet any of the other homebrewers and the other Pro-Am contestants?
I've met a few. I'm looking forward to meeting a lot more as this weekend goes on.
What were the things that the professional brewer was able to help you with your recipe, and are there things that you learned that you can return then to your homebrew scale and bring to the beer?
When you're brewing with a professional, you really get to understand the scale-up operation, which really is so important. You see how you're able to take that recipe and what tweaks are necessary, because, the professional brewer, he knows the system. When he's brewing 7, 10, 20 barrels, he knows what efficiencies he has. He knows how the fermentation is conducted. He knows how much yeast to pitch to get it to properly ferment. And really, it's just all those tips that you're able to get from that professional brewer then, and the process you're able then to take back to your own home and try to emulate that a bit, as well as you can.
Did you have to change your recipe at all when doing it?
A little bit. Mike, we were able to be pretty. We had some pretty good fidelity with this recipe in that most of the ingredients that I had used for my 5 gallons, we were able to get in for this larger operation too. There were a few different grains that he wasn't able to get, so we just substituted a few according to his suggestions. But otherwise, it's pretty close to the recipe that I brewed as 5 gallons.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks a bunch.
No problem. My pleasure.
Unfortunately for Joe, his beer wasn't chosen to medal, but it was very, very good, and I can only imagine how good the medalists were. So thanks to Joe for taking time to talk with us. Here's who did win. The gold was a Baltic Porter from Foothills Brewing Company in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The brewmaster was Jamie Bartholomeus, and the AHA member was Tom Nolan. Silver went to Hop Dog IPA from Papago Brewing Company in Scottsdale, Arizona. The brewmaster was Scott Yarosh. The AHA member was Barry Tingleff. And bronze was Whale's Tail Pale Ale from Odell Brewing Company of Fort Collins, Colorado. The brewmaster was Doug Odell, and the AHA member was Ryan Thomas. Now, here's what the homebrewers get. The homebrewer winners get a year's supply of malt or malt extract, their choice, which is equal to 3 50-pound bags of Briess Anniversary Malt, which is a base malt, or 24 3.3-pound cans of CBW Pilsen Light Malt Extract, and that's enough to brew 12 5-gallon batches of beer. And they also get a year's supply of Y-yeast activators, 100% pure liquid yeast for homebrewers. And the professional brewers who medaled got 500 pounds of Briess Anniversary Malt for a 10-barrel brew, a year's supply of Y-yeast activators, 100% pure liquid yeast for homebrewers. So there you go. Congratulations to everybody who won and everybody who participated, because you had to be a winner even to compete. So that's fun stuff. I hope they'll do it again next year. Now, if you'll remember a few episodes back, Rick Sellers from Pacific Brew News Radio came on the podcast to talk about being a judge in the Longshot homebrew competition sponsored by the Boston Brew Company, or Boston Beer Company, maker of Samuel Adams beers. Rick judged while he was in San Francisco. When we were in Denver, while we were in Denver for GABF, the Sam Adams folks hosted a fabulous brunch for the media to announce the winners of the Longshot competition. And thanks to swift action by Brian Warren, we got a front row seat, so you get to hear really well what went on. In fact, we were so close, don't be surprised if you see us in the Sam Adams commercials, if they do commercials announcing the homebrew competition, the Longshot homebrew competition. But here's how Boston Beer Company founder Jim Cook announced the winners.
I'm Jim Cook from Sam Adams, and this is actually pretty cool because the most people we've ever had. I think we've been doing this media brunch for about 10 years, and it gets bigger and bigger. So thank everybody for coming. And more importantly, I wanted to, in some ways, tie together both the current state of the Great American Beer Festival and maybe tie it back to its roots. I believe there's probably maybe two people here who have been to every GABF, the founders, Charlie Papazian, right here. Probably all of you know Charlie. Who started this basically just to get free beer from the brewers, and Daniel Bradford in the back, the other founder. So to these gentlemen we owe this wonderful event, and they must have been just out of their minds to conceive of it 25 years ago. And for those of you who were there in the early years, I missed the first two, but in the very early years, those of you who are here will remember that the GABF, and in fact the sort of the microbrewers convention, were basically the tail end of a much bigger event, which was the Homebrewers Convention. The AHA was the big organization, and then there was this little rump group of bizarro brewers, people who had quote-unquote gone pro, and we were welcomed, tolerated, and supported morally and in other ways by that homebrewing community. So one of the things that we feel very happy about is bringing back some of that original relationship, because today we have homebrewers, and I want to introduce them in two groups. The first group is three brewers who all work for Boston Beer Company. And every year at Boston Beer Company, we have an employee homebrew contest. And we are now getting virtually everybody in the company who homebrews. We're over 95% participation. So we get over 300 beers from people in Boston Beer Company. And for us, it's just wonderful because no matter what you do in Boston Beer Company, whether you're in finance or operations or logistics, you're a brewer. And you understand and appreciate the wonder of the creation of beer. And you also realize it ain't that hard. It's hard to make really great beer, but it's not that hard to make damn good beer. It's about as simple as making bread. And if you can make bread, you can make beer. And it's way more fun making beer. And it lasts much longer. So, and this year, we are reviving something that we began about 12 years ago, which was called Long Shot. And it was an attempt to find great homebrew recipes from all over, back then even the world, because we got entries from 6 or 8 different countries. We are going to bring that back. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to release them commercially. And we'll see what happens out among beer drinkers, whether they're ready for this again. And we're going to have a 6-pack, and there will be 3 different beers in there. One of those beers will be chosen from the 3 brewers that I'm about to introduce, all of whom work in various capacities at Boston Beer Company. And hopefully you've seen them on the floor of the show, proudly pouring their own beers. Make sure you vote, because this is going to be a people's choice, and it'll be chosen by everybody at the GABF from 3 beers. I'll just introduce the people. Let's see if I can do it in alphabetical order. I'll start with John Bowen. Actually, why don't I bring John? Why don't you just come on up and say a few words about your beer? As you'll be able to tell when John opens his mouth, he's not from Boston.
Thanks, Jim. I'm John Bowen. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and worked for Boston Beer about 14 years now, and in the off-premise sales world is what I do now. So I work with the big chains and make it possible for you guys to get our beer. The beer that I brewed was a cherry-kissed stout, and hopefully a lot of you have been able to try it or try it today. It's got a really light, fruity taste to it. I didn't want to try to overpower the maltiness in the beer. The bitterness works well with the maltiness, and it gives it a really good balance. You get the fruit just a little bit at the nose, and then right again at the end. So it came out very well, and I hope you like it.
Thank you. And Tina, second beer is from Tina Petaway, and she'll talk a little bit about her pale ale.
Hi, I'm Tina Petaway, and I live in Dallas, Texas, and I work in on-premise sales for Boston Beer Company, and I've been there about 3 years. So this is only my 3rd time homebrewing, and I made a pale ale, and I think a lot of you have tried it. I use 3 types of hops in this: Cascade, Goldings, and Saaz, and so it's definitely very hoppy, but it's not overpowering the malt. You get a lot of the hops, but it's well balanced. Cheers.
Cheers. And finally, from here in Denver is Ken Smith.
Hi, I'm Ken Smith, and I live down in Highlands Ranch and have been with the company for 11 years in sales. And I brewed a boysenberry wheat, which it's got just a touch of boysenberry on it that kind of balances out the crispness of the wheat, and I think it's pretty darn good.
Cheers. Cheers. Thank you, guys. And next, I'll talk a little bit about the homebrewers who brought us their recipes. As part of this competition, we got 1,500 homebrew recipes from all around the country. And frankly, we could not have done this without the support of the homebrew community. Just the logistics, the cataloging, the judging, just the management of that effort is beyond the capabilities of Boston Beer. We may make 20 million cases of beer, but we could not handle the logistics that these homebrewers handled of getting all these beers into 5 regional locations, cataloging them, keeping them straight, evaluating them, getting the results to people. So it was a kind of effort that only a grassroots organization can do. We could not have brewed 1,500 beers and judged them, but a grassroots organization can bring to the beer drinking community that kind of creativity, passion, innovation, differentiation, all the things that have really been the roots of the craft brewing movement. They go deep, and when they go deep, they go into home brewing. So we couldn't have done this except for the homebrew community. I'll introduce the people who helped me judge these beers, who came to Boston and did the tasting with us. We've got here Todd Ahlstrom, most of you know, from Beer Advocate, and I will proudly display my Beer Advocate t-shirt, which they were kind enough to give me yesterday. And having been on the road for 4 days, getting a clean shirt was a great thing. They knew just what I needed. And then Gary Glass from the AHA is here. He is the maestro of homebrewing in America at this point. And somewhere is Tony Forder. There he is. All of you know him as publisher, editor of Ale Street News. And I've got a tattoo for that, but I'm not going to show you. And finally, from the West Coast, Bill Brandt, oh, there you are, Bill. Welcome. Thank you. They helped me judge these beers. It was a really good judging session. I learned a lot, and I didn't get my way. So that was probably pretty good. And now let me introduce the 5 finalists whose beers were selected from 1,500 beers all over the country. Each won one of the 5 regional competitions, kind of in alphabetical order. Rob Beck. Why don't you come on up here? Rob is from Kansas City. He made a Maibach. You want to talk about it? Just tell them a little bit about your beer. And
it was a Maibach. It's a beer that I brew for our homebrew club, the Kansas City Beermeisters' annual MyFest picnic every year.
How did you find out about the long shot thing?
I saw flyers for it in my local homebrew shop.
That's the kind of thing that only happens in a grassroots community. I mean, we put it on national TV. Didn't mean anything. Cool. All right. Anything else you want to say?
Not really. No.
Okay. Go back to your drinking. And from Asheville, Alec, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Alex Buchholz? Borkholz. Okay. Bierkolz. You want to talk a little bit about your beer?
Sure. My beer is a Belgian-style saison, and it's originally it roots from the farmhouse ales of Belgium. It's brewed with a little bit of wheat, Pilsner malts, noble hops, Spalt, Hersbrucker. It's got all the elements going on, fruity, spicy, and it's been a good recipe for me, and I really like the beer.
Yeah, it was extraordinarily complex. It was really wonderful. And then Greg Geiger from right here in Denver, Colorado, will talk a little bit about his American barley wine.
Hi.
Some of you may have seen him on TV yesterday. We were doing a little thing on What Good Day Colorado.
Right.
He was the star of it. We brought him in, and we all fumbled around and tried to figure out what to say.
I was fumbling around. I think. But my barley wine is American style barley wine. It's got a ton of honey in it, and I think that maybe is what differentiates itself from other barley wines, or at least most barley wines. So it's a Colorado clover honey.
Oh, cool.
Right. And I saw the competition on a commercial, actually. And
so
I
immediately did reach somebody. Good.
Right.
$1.5 million you get. It was worth it.
Right. I ran down to the basement and just grabbed a bunch and sent it out. So
great.
Okay.
Oh, man. Then fourth from Hillmar, California is Don Oliver.
Morning. For the competition, I brewed an old ale. I like heavier, more alcoholic beers for the wintertime, and I wanted something that I could put away and see how it aged over a couple years. So I made a really, really malty beer that I thought would last and had a nice red glow to it.
It was delicious.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally from actually up in New England on Cape Cod, Bruce Stott, who will talk about his Dortmunder export. Very, difficult style. It was. I'm always impressed with homebrewers who make really difficult styles like that, because I could never do it at home.
Thanks. Actually, I made that beer. It was the last beer I made before I moved from Connecticut. I just this summer moved to Cape Cod, and previous to that I lived in Connecticut most of my life. And I have in my basement, I have one room that in the wintertime, well, all of the year, it's closed off from the rest of the basement. And in the wintertime, it just so happens that room stays at about 48, 50, 52 degrees. And I said, gee, I'm moving. I've got this room that's perfect for lagers. My last beer in Connecticut has to be a lager. And here I am. Oh, and I don't have any tattoos.
Prove it. Well, thank all of you. They were all wonderful beers. The judging was very difficult because they were so good. And I cannot tell you that it was unanimous, but we ended up taking a vote, and we ended up picking two beers. And without going into any more ado, the two beers were Don and Bruce, the Dortmunder Export and the Old Ale.
It's interesting to note that one of the beers Rick Sellers judged actually won. So, there you go. We caught up with the two winning homebrewers. First, Donald Oliver, then Bruce Stott.
We're beer geeks here at Basic Brewing Radio, so
I can appreciate that.
Donald Oliver, tell us about your old ale.
Well, like I was just telling him, the old ale that I made, I wanted to shoot for something that I could store for a long time and enjoy during the wintertime. A nice heavy ale. I used a lot of two-row, some Belgian malts in there too, and a nice decent balance of hops, but not too much on the end, so there's not a lot of hop aroma involved with it. And Scottish ale yeast, so I could get the higher alcohol content in there.
And how old is the old ale?
Actually, I didn't think it was ready yet. I only brewed it in May. Yeah. Wow. So I was planning on enjoying it around Christmas and then seeing how it aged out, but apparently it did all right.
Well, you've got to be excited about seeing this brewed commercially.
I'm extremely excited about it. I didn't plan on winning this thing to begin with. I just wanted a judging sheet back, so this is amazing.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, Bruce Stott?
I'm Bruce Stott. That's correct.
And you've got the Dortmunder Export. Tell us, we're beer geeks, so, get geeky about your beer. Tell us the details.
Oh, beer geeks. Okay, well, as then you must know that this is supposed to be a well-balanced lager with maltiness and hoppiness both in balance, and that would be classic styles. And that's what I was aiming for. I think a lot of people in the homebrew community are going overboard on hoppiness. And I've been judging beers for a lot of years too. I'm a BJCP judge. And some of the best beers that I've tasted, I thought were really too hoppy, that they would have been even better had they not been so hoppy. And so I'm kind of on a campaign to try to get home brewers to cut back a little bit on the hoppiness. And so I think this beer was a reflection of that move, too, because it certainly was not over-hopping.
So you're on the old-fashioned side?
Perhaps, yes. Yeah, I think the people, if Dogfish Head will ever pardon me, I think the people that follow their route are really going overboard.
So you wound up doing this out of necessity of the environmental conditions. You were in your house and you were about to lose your basement, and you said, "What the heck?"
Well, exactly. The house that I just moved to Cape Cod from Connecticut, and the house that I had in Connecticut had a basement room that was absolutely ideal for making lagers in the wintertime. And so I knew I was moving, and I said, "Oh, before I move, I've got to make my last lager here."
Excellent. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you looking forward to seeing the commercial example?
I've already sampled a lot of the commercial beers. We've been here since Thursday. So this will be the last one.
I mean the commercial example of your beer.
Oh, of my beer. Yes, I am. Yes, I think that would be exciting to be able to open a beer and say, "Hey, look at this, I'm commercial."
All right. Well, again, congratulations.
Thanks again.
I'll bet you Bruce ruffled a few feathers out there with his with his comments about aggressive hopping. But, that's the beauty of home brewing. You get to make it the way you like. If you like the hops, put them in there. If you don't. Next, we go on to chat with Jim Cook, the founder of Boston Beer Company. And the first question we asked him was, are you going to do this again next year?
I hope so. It's really contingent on the consumer acceptance. And it really comes down to does it sell well enough to stay fresh on the shelves? It would be a travesty for these wonderful beers to be brewed and put out there and then sit on a shelf so that people buy them stale. And that was actually why we discontinued the long shot competition 10 years ago. We were making great beers, but there wasn't enough acceptance of them to keep them fresh all the way to the consumer's glass. And if it's not a great beer in the consumer's glass, no matter how good a job the brewer did, you're not doing the consumer any favor.
Are these two particular styles going to present any kind of challenges in brewing commercially?
Oh, these? No. Given the range of beers that we already make, I can guarantee you these will be a whole heck of a lot easier than another batch of Utopias.
Now, tell the truth. You've got to be kind of relieved that an American barley wine with Colorado honey didn't make it into the final thing.
Well, no. I told everybody in the judging that let's pick the best beers. We can deal with all the other issues. American barley wine, that's well within our brewing capabilities. And while I won't tell you how I voted, I will tell you that I voted for different beers than one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they went the other way than what you thought?
Well, I didn't get my way, let's put it that way. But that's why we had these very capable judges. And I'm very happy with the decision. But if it had just been, me making, a single decision, it would have been different. But that's okay.
But you've got to be happy with the response.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And I think it's worth a try to do long shot again, because it really, to me, it expands the consumer's understanding of beer when they learn that home brewers can actually make really great beer. Because the average consumer thinks, homebrew, it tastes like homebrew, and they don't understand how good homebrewers are and how wonderful their beers are, and, how they are really the roots of creativity in American brewing.
So you don't see homebrewing as competition to your brew?
Oh, no, because no matter how much beer you make at home, you got to go out to a bar or a restaurant, and a home brewer is going to order a good beer. And so I don't think there's a whole lot of home brewers out there just hankering to get to a bar, to have some low-carb light beer.
Well, I only have one complaint from a homebrewing standpoint about your beers. The labels could be a little easier to get off the bottles.
Well, that's a really good point. And actually, we try, the glues that we use are easier than the normal ones, not to help our homebrewer friends, but we actually are virtually the last brewer that recycles their bottles. So in the deposit states, we bring our bottles back, and we don't throw them away or crush them. We actually refill them.
Wow.
So we have to run them through a washer. We could take them in and put them through a soaker. So we are just like homebrewers. We got to get the labels off, too.
Well, thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
Good to meet you.
Well, that's the thing about asking silly questions. Sometimes you throw a question in there just for a joke, and you get a good answer back. You just never know. And by the way, my comment about the barley wine was not about how difficult it would be to brew technically, but really about how expensive a barley wine would be to brew, especially with lots of Colorado clover honey. So there you go, just a little clarification there. I want to thank the folks at the Boston Beer Company for inviting us to the brunch. It was a lot of fun. The food was awesome. And by the way, all of it had beer as an ingredient. Even the salad dressing had beer in the ingredient. And this egg thing where they had the English muffin, and there's this poached egg on it with some like rib meat that was braised in beer. It was just the best thing that I ate while I was out there in Colorado. Just wonderful stuff. And the snifters of Utopias were just the warm-up we needed to head into that afternoon's tasting session at GABF. So I know. I'm gloating a little bit. Can't help it. Next week, we're going to take you to a demonstration of what it's like behind closed doors with judges as they evaluate beers at GABF. We may also get to take away some hints about how to think about entering beers in homebrew competitions. So that's, I think that'll be an interesting show. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say, hey, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And while you're on our site, you can check out our online shop, where you can find great pricing on our DVDs and a combo deal to save you even more. In our first DVD, Basic Brewing, Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, we walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in Basic Brewing, Stepping into All Grain, we take you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort, including infusion mashing and step mashing and fly sparging and batch sparging, all that kind of stuff. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online. But that's all for us. Until next week, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.